We got more off-field issues to talk about at Georgia, which means we have culture issues to talk about. It's a big word that's being thrown around lately. Georgia, culture. Culture, Georgia. If you have been living your life and you haven't been paying attention to the headlines, I don't blame you. Ra Thomas is a transfer wide receiver there from Missouri, formerly, I believe, and he got arrested, and it's pretty serious charges. Among them are cruelty to children charges, and that happened a couple of days ago. The arrest was Friday morning at 3 a.m. So that just gets tossed up on a scrap heap of like 24 or so very high-profile arrests at Georgia, most of them driving and traffic-related. This one is a world above and beyond that and has really nothing to do with those. Or does it? Because then the age-old question at this point gets tossed on top of all that, and that is, well, what kind of culture has Kirby Smart built over there at Georgia? So, well, of course, all of that's inexcusable. So let's get that out of the way. No one needs to ever have charges like that thrown against them. Now, I haven't seen to this point anything else come of that. So, because of the seriousness of the nature of those charges, I'm going to hang back and see what actually happened on that front. I'm just going to assume, because it's not the first time that Ra Thomas has had those kinds of run-ins with the law, that there's something there. I don't know anything about that. So what we do know is another Georgia player got arrested. That led us to Saturday. So Saturday mornings, when most of the world sees that, it's when I saw it. And so I sat there and I said, here it goes. And I made my morning breakfast and I cranked up the internet, and sure enough, the avalanche hit me square in the face. And so I responded, Colin, do me a favor, dial up the tweet I put out. If you haven't seen this yet and you're looking on YouTube, just read it. If you haven't seen it and you're listening on podcast, here's what it says. Pay close attention here. Casuals will say Georgia's culture is rotten and then trash anyone who doesn't predict them to win the SEC. This is intentional silence, so I just want to give you a second. What do you think about that? It's not that it doesn't matter. I didn't say it doesn't matter. I didn't say culture doesn't matter. In fact, there's a lot there I didn't say that people heard me say. So here is what I'm simply trying to say. I really don't think you care. A lot of you, I really don't think you care. So in that tweet, here's what wasn't said. Let me just deal with this first. 95% of people who responded to that poorly had cartoon characters for their profile on Twitter. So they're not serious people. Most of these unserious people heard me say, this is no big deal. Well, I never said that. They said, you're telling me Kirby's not at fault? Nope, he is at fault. He's the leader of the program. It falls at his feet. So I never said that either. Are you taking allegations of child cruelty lightly? No, I take them very seriously. Are you telling me there's not an issue here? No, it seems like there's a pretty big issue here. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying I don't think you really care about it. So last week, we had a show where we did our season preview, and we predicted conference championship winners, we predicted the playoff, and trust me, all of this ties together because I put it out there, and I didn't have Georgia in the SEC championship game. I had him in the playoff. What was it, Jesse, as like a 9 or 10 seed or something like that. And so I had a lot of people come at me and say, how crazy is that? How stupid is that? Georgia's the best team in this conference. You don't even have them playing for the SEC title game? And okay, that's normal. You can disagree with the prediction. But here's the funny thing. The funny thing is, this headline drops on Saturday morning, where there is yet another in a long line now of off-field issues for Georgia. And people hop on me, and they're talking about culture. They're yelling about culture. Georgia's got a culture. You're going to call out Georgia's culture. And the thing about it is they're DMing me. DM means direct message for those of you who don't use the socials. And so a lot of these people, I think, forgot that I can see the previous message they sent me. So what happened was Saturday morning, I probably had 1 to 2 dozen that I opened instances where someone was calling Georgia's culture out, and no more than 48 hours earlier, they'd called me stupid for not predicting Georgia to win the conference. So my reply was, well, hold up. Do you think their culture sucks or doesn't it? And if you think their culture sucks, do you really just not think culture matters? And so I replied that a few times, and I got a bunch of back, so I tweeted it publicly. Colin, do me a favor one more time and throw the tweet back up. Casuals will say Georgia's culture is rotten and then trash anyone who doesn't predict them to win the SEC. I think culture is really important. I think it's a very, very vital piece, especially if you exist in a world where there are other high-level programs that culturally have their act together. You're probably not going to get away with having a bad one. I had a lot of folks throw Florida 2008 in my face. Florida won a national title in 2008, and since then we've learned internally they were a mess. That is one example. You've got some Miami teams in decades past that could be provided theoretically as an example of a place where there was a lot of off-field incident and issue, but on the field, boy, they were a wrecking crew. That's true. Far more likely and far more plentiful are the examples of programs and ultimately teams that massively underachieved because they had the talent piece, but they didn't have the culture piece. The overwhelming rule in this sport, contrary to those exceptions, has been and always will be, if you got a lot of talent in the locker room, that's a starting point. But if your culture sucks, you're not ultimately going to achieve at the highest level. Now, some of these places stack so much talent, Florida 08, Miami, depending on which year you want to talk about, that they can even afford to be loose culturally, but because they are so premier talent-wise, they could still win it all. But that's not my point. My point's not that Georgia can't win it all, but if you really think that their culture's a mess, and someone merely predicts them to, not make the SEC title game, do you really think culture matters all that much? If you're coming after that person, yeah, their culture sucks, but you're crazy if you don't think they're going to win the SEC. You're crazy if you don't think they're going to be in the SEC championship game. So then I had another kind of person who came and said, no, I am not saying any of these things. I'm saying that if you have a win-at-all-cost mentality, Josh, then maybe that's the culture. And so maybe winning football games is the culture they have there. Off-field incidents be damned. Maybe winning football games is the culture absent anything else mattering. I do think Georgia has a culture. I just think it's a win-at-all-cost mentality. I got that a lot. I don't know how many people ended up saying that to me. So I'm going to get to that in a second. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying culture doesn't matter. I'm not even saying Georgia might not have issues there. I just am saying I don't think most of you care about it. I really don't think most of you care about it because almost nobody who yells about culture on the internet actually cares about culture. You kind of have this circular faux caring that, gets worked up inside you when you see a lot of other people saying things and you desperately want to say something impactful online. And so you grab your torch and your pitchfork and you go after someone, and then you put the torch down and the pitchfork down, and you log off, you go take a shower, you're going about your day. You're not really outraged by anything. It doesn't matter if it actually impacted someone's life or not. I'm just saying I don't think most of you care about it. Most of you can't beat Georgia on the field. That's what it boils down to. So this is as close as a lot of you get to a victory over Georgia. Because if it was happening at UL Monroe, all due respect, I don't think any of us would hear much about it. But it's happening at Georgia. And to whom much is given, much is expected. And to whom a big spotlight is given, a lot more scrutiny is going to be placed on the head of. Yes, yes, yes. Those are Mima's quotes, and I understand all that, and I acknowledge that. But I really don't think you care. So that's what I was calling out. It's not that the stuff is irrelevant. It's not that the stuff doesn't matter. It's not that there aren't people's lives actually being put in danger with the actions of some Georgia players off the field. All that's true. All that's bad. I'm not calling them out. I'm not even making a commentary on them. That's a whole separate thing. I was just replying to a lot of people who pretend to be outraged by it who aren't really outraged by it. It's just the top football program in America. Most of you hadn't been able to beat them on the field aside from Alabama, and so this is your only shot to take a shot. So you've taken shots. If I'm wrong about you, then I'm wrong about you. Now, I had one of our viewers DM me today and say, I genuinely care about public safety. I'm not talking about you if that's how you feel. If you just genuinely care about public safety, we've had loss of life up there because of poor off-field decisions. I don't make light of that. You have some serious allegations against Ra Thomas. Hey, I don't make light of that. And if your genuine motivation for calling that out is you're scared for the public safety of others, and you think that Georgia football has really become a nuisance in that regard, absent anything else in the football world mattering, well, number one, that's a perfectly valid way to feel, and I'm obviously not talking about you because I doubt you came at me about something as inconsequential as an SEC championship prediction and then in the very next breath talked about something as serious as this. I'm talking about the folks who contradict themselves and don't even realize they're contradicting themselves. Two things that I don't think are true here. First, Kirby Smart's not doing anything about this. Kirby needs to do something about it. Kirby's done a ton. It may not have worked across the board. There's a big difference in Kirby doing what he thinks is best, Kirby Smart and Georgia at large doing what they think needs to be done to prevent this stuff, and it's still happening, versus Kirby Smart and Georgia not doing anything and it continuing to happen. It is not my place to air all that stuff out. They can do it in their own time if they want to. If Georgia and Kirby Smart would like to publicize the steps they've taken internally to try and prevent this stuff, they can. I promise you, they've done everything they know to do. Notice what I just said. I didn't say they've done everything it takes, because obviously some stuff still keeps happening. I said they've done everything they know to do. I can promise you there are many parents watching the show tonight who probably at one time or another in your own lives have arrived at a point where you feel like you instilled discipline in your son or your daughter. You taught them the right and wrong. You tried to guide them on the right path. But guess whose job it ultimately is to make decisions? It ain't yours. You're not raising a robot. It's a human. Now imagine you've got like 100 of them in your building that are all alpha types and got tons of money tossed in their lap. And you don't really legally get to do to them what parents get to do to them. This stuff can still happen. It's not excuse making. It falls at the feet of Kirby Smart. It's not excuse making. It just is. So it's a lie when people say, oh, they haven't done anything there. No, they obviously just haven't done enough there. They've taken action. They thought it was enough. Maybe it's not. The other thing is this win at all costs mentality. I don't think Georgia has a win at all costs mentality. I really don't. Again, I am cheating because I've gotten to see inside the program. So I know how they go about things. I know what they stand upon. I know what the principles and values there are. You can either choose to believe that or not. It doesn't change what the reality is. It doesn't change what the fact is. It's an imperfect program. It's a flawed program. It's a really good program. It's a place where I genuinely believe they're trying to do things the right way. It just hasn't worked out across the board like they want it to. This is not the first place where a group of people have instilled what they hope to be the right DNA inside the program and defined their core principles and values, and not everyone adhered to it. It's not the first time that's ever happened. It's just the latest example in a high-profile setting of that not happening. But I will maintain this. A lot of you made fun of me for saying this. That's fine, because I still believe it. Kirby Smart can do all he knows to do there. Kirby Smart's going to have team after team after team. Kirby Smart can coach as long as he wants to. The seniors in that group got one more go-around. It's their team. It's their responsibility. They got to take it upon themselves to police themselves. That's not absolving the adults in the room. Above and beyond the adults in the room, the best teams out there are not coach-led. The best teams out there, the ones that'll be there at the finish line, the programs that are there every single year in the mix, they're not there because the coaches look over players' shoulders constantly. They're there because the coaches don't have to look over the players' shoulders constantly because the best teams are player-led. And so if Georgia's worth its salt, if they're going to fulfill on the potential, if they're going to fulfill on these preseason predictions that a lot of people have heaped upon them, the players will take care of it there. And if the players don't, then Georgia as a program won't achieve at the level as high as maybe they were capable of achieving. That's it. I don't even get what's controversial about that. I do get what's controversial because folks just want to scalp. You know, Kirby suspended Ra Thomas indefinitely the other day. And people were still yelling for him to do something. And I'm looking around like, he just did. No, but he needs to do more. What in the world do you want him to do? Do you want him to personally accompany Ra Thomas down to Guantanamo and throw away the key? What would you like him to do? It's an ongoing investigation. What more is he supposed to do? You're trying to apply logic at that point to a totally illogical situation. And by the way, fact of the matter is, if this was happening for DeBoer at Alabama, Georgia folks just as crazily would be yelling the same stuff Bama folks are yelling. If it were happening with Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Bama and Georgia folks would be yelling the same thing. So this is not exclusive to Georgia. Georgia just happens to be the one in the wrong spotlight right now. So those are my thoughts on that. Let's move on to much happier times in the show tonight. Happy you're with us. I'll be happy to listen to your opinions. I'm sure a lot of you are going to counter what I just said. All I ask, humbly, all I ask is that if you disagree with what I said, it won't be the first time, won't be the last time, but if you disagree with what I said, make sure you heard what I actually said. That's all I ask, because I have found on this particular topic, 90+% of the disagreements that I've gotten into stem from people not knowing what I actually said. So that's all I ask.